The metal railing of the small observation deck felt cool beneath Andre Wilson's hands as he leaned forward, eyes fixed on the sleek private jets taking off from Atlanta Municipal Airport. At 17, Andre had spent every possible moment of the last 3 years watching aircraft, studying them and dreaming about them. The early morning sun glinted off the polished fuselages, and the familiar smell of jet fuel hung in the air, a scent that most people wrinkled their nose at, but one that filled Andre with excitement. "There goes another G650, he whispered, to himself, recognizing the distinctive silhouette of the Gulfstream jet as it climbed into the Georgia sky. He pulled out his worn notebook and jotted down a few observations about its takeoff pattern, adding to his meticulous collection of notes. Andre lived with his grandmother in a modest apartment just 2 bus rides away from the airport. Their neighborhood wasn't fancy. Cracked sidewalks, corner stores with security bars, and apartment buildings that had seen better days. But it was home. His grandmother, Mabel Wilson, had raised him since he was 8 after his parents died in a car accident. She didn't understand his obsession with planes, but she supported him anyway. "Boy's got aviation fuel in his blood instead of coffee," she'd tell the neighbors when they asked about Andre's constant trips to the airport. What his grandmother didn't know was that Andre had moved beyond just watching planes. For the past year, he had been quietly helping Mr. Patterson, one of the maintenance mechanics who worked on the small private aircraft. It started when Andre noticed the older man struggling with a heavy toolbox and offered to help. That simple act of kindness had evolved into an unofficial apprenticeship. "You've got good hands and a better eye," Mr. Patterson had told him, after Andre spotted a hairline crack in a fuel line that even the veteran mechanic had missed. "Some folks study for years and never develop the instincts you've got naturally." The sound of the airport service door opening pulled Andre from his thoughts. Mr. Patterson waved him over, his blue maintenance uniform stained with grease and his salt and pepper beard looking more salt than pepper in the morning light. "Morning, Mr. P," Andre called out, jogging over. "Need a hand with anything today?" The older man's face was unusually serious. "More than a hand, kid. We've got a situation. Henderson Aviation Services just called. They're short-handed and desperate for help with basic maintenance. Their regular crew got food poisoning at some company picnic, and they've got high-profile clients coming through all week." Andre's heart raced. Henderson was the premier service center at the airport, handling the most expensive private jets for celebrities and business executives. They didn't typically hire teenagers without formal training or certification. "And you mentioned me?" Andre asked cautiously. "I did more than mention you, I vouched for you." Mr. Patterson adjusted his cap nervously. "Look, it's just temporary. Cleaning, basic checks, helping the remaining mechanics, nothing you can't handle. But if you mess up, it's my reputation, too." Andre swallowed hard. "I won't let you down, Mr. P. When do they need me?" "About an hour ago," Mr. Patterson said with a wry smile. "Get changed. I brought you a spare uniform. It's too big, but it's better than those jeans." The Henderson Aviation hangar was 3 times the size of the facility where Andre usually helped out. The concrete floor was polished to a shine, and sophisticated equipment lined the walls. 5 different jets were parked inside, each worth more than Andre's entire neighborhood combined. Men and women in pressed uniforms moved with purpose, speaking in technical jargon that made Andre both excited and nervous. A stern-looking woman with short gray hair approached them. Her name badge identified her as Diane Henderson, Operations Manager. "This is the kid?" she asked Mr. Patterson, looking Andre up and down. The oversized uniform made him look even younger than his 17 years. "This is Andre Wilson. Best natural talent I've seen in 30 years of aircraft maintenance," Mr. Patterson said firmly. Diane's expression remained skeptical. "We'll see. Follow me, young man." Andre shot Mr. Patterson a nervous look before following Ms. Henderson deeper into the hangar. She walked briskly, pointing out different areas as they went. "Restrooms there. Break room, though you won't have time to use. Your tool checkout requires ID and signature. Every tool must be accounted for before any aircraft leaves the ground, understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Andre replied, struggling to keep up with both her pace and the flood of information. "You'll be shadowing Hector today," she said, gesturing to a stocky man checking fluid levels on a jet engine. Do exactly as he says, touch nothing without permission, and for heaven's sake don't break anything. These aircraft cost more than you'll earn in a lifetime. Andre nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. His grandmother's voice echoed in his head. When opportunity knocks, you better be dressed and ready to answer. The door. Hector turned out to be more patient than Ms. Henderson. He showed Andre the basics of the maintenance checklist and set him to work cleaning the interior of a Cessna Citation, while Hector handled the more technical aspects. Not bad, kid, Hector commented, inspecting Andre's work on the cabin. You've done this before. Just on smaller planes, Andre admitted. Mr. Patterson's been teaching me. Old David Patterson? That explains it. Man's a legend. Stubborn as they come, but he knows his stuff. Hector handed Andre a different checklist. Let's see how you do with the exterior inspection on this one while I finish the hydraulics check on the Citation. The first 2 days passed in a blur of activity. Andre absorbed everything he could, staying late to help and arriving early the next morning. By his third day, he had earned enough trust to be assigned basic tasks without direct supervision. That afternoon, he was sent to clean the cabin of a Gulfstream G650, the same model he'd watched take off just days earlier. Andre ran his hand over the plush leather seats in the jet's cabin, marveling at the luxury. The wood paneling gleamed, and the carpet was thicker than his mattress at home. As he worked his way through the cabin with a vacuum, he noticed something odd about the electrical panel near the cockpit. A small section of the cover was warmer than it should be, almost hot to the touch. He set aside the vacuum and leaned in for a closer look. Years of studying aircraft manuals in his free time had given Andre a decent understanding of electrical systems. The panel shouldn't be generating that much heat, especially with the aircraft powered down for maintenance. Andre hesitated. He was just a temporary helper, the lowest person on the totem pole. But if something was wrong and he didn't report it, he found Hector working on another jet across the hangar. Excuse me, Mr. Hector? I noticed something strange on the Gulfstream. The electrical panel by the cockpit is hot, and I saw some discoloration on the wiring harness. Hector frowned. Hot? The aircraft is powered down. I know, sir. That's why it seemed wrong to me. Hector followed Andre back to the Gulfstream. After examining the panel, his expression turned serious. Good catch, kid. Really good catch. He pulled out his radio. Ms. Henderson, we've got a situation with the Reynolds jet. Possible electrical short in the main cabin panel. We need to pull the whole assembly. Andre stood back as more senior mechanics gathered around. The simple cleaning job had just become a major repair operation. Ms. Henderson approached, her face tight with concern. How bad? She asked. Bad enough that it could have caused a fire mid-flight, Hector replied. The kid caught it. All eyes turned to Andre, who suddenly wished he could disappear into his oversized uniform. Ms. Henderson's stern expression softened slightly. Good work, Wilson. Very good work. She turned to the team. Let's get this fixed. The jet needs to be ready for Mr. Reynolds by tomorrow morning. He's flying to Tokyo for a major business deal. As the team began to work, Andre returned to his cleaning duties, occasionally glancing over at the activity around the Gulfstream. He felt a surge of pride knowing he had potentially prevented a serious incident. Maybe, just maybe, he belonged in this world of aviation after all. The afternoon sun slanted through the high windows of the Henderson Aviation hangar, casting long shadows across the polished concrete floor. Andre wiped sweat from his forehead as he finished vacuuming another private jet. His back ached from bending and stretching into tight corners, but he didn't mind. Being surrounded by these magnificent machines made every moment worth it. Wilson, Ms. Henderson's voice echoed through the hangar. Report to Bay 3. Andre quickly put away the vacuum and hurried across the hangar floor. Bay 3 was where the Gulfstream G650 sat partially dismantled, its electrical panel exposed like an open wound. The jet belonged to Thomas Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Technologies, and was scheduled to fly to Tokyo the next morning for what the mechanics had been whispering was a billion-dollar business deal. As Andre approached, he saw the team of senior mechanics huddled around a laptop looking at wiring diagrams. Their faces were grim. There you are, Miss Henderson said, gesturing him closer. Hector says you were the one who spotted the issue initially. What exactly did you notice? Andre swallowed hard, suddenly aware that 6 highly trained professionals were waiting for his answer. The panel was hot to the touch, ma'am, even though the aircraft was powered down. And there was discoloration on the wiring harness, like it had been overheating for a while. Hector nodded. The kid's right. We've got evidence of arcing in the main power distribution panel. The insulation has been compromised in 3 separate sections. If this had gone undetected. How long to fix it? Ms. Henderson cut in, her voice tight with concern. That's the problem, said another mechanic, a tall man named Rick. We're looking at a minimum of 12 hours to trace all the affected systems, replace the damaged components, and run the necessary tests. And we don't have all the parts we need on site. Ms. Henderson checked her watch. It's already 4:30. Reynolds needs this jet ready by 7 a.m. tomorrow. We've called every supplier in a 100-mile radius, Rick said. The specialized connectors we need won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. A heavy silence fell over the group. Andre stood quietly, feeling like an intruder in their professional crisis. What about fabricating the connectors? He asked softly, then immediately regretted speaking up when all eyes turned to him. What did you say? Ms. Henderson asked. Andre took a deep breath. Mr. Patterson showed me how to fabricate connectors when we couldn't get parts for older models. If the specifications are similar, Hector looked thoughtful. It's possible, but risky. These aren't just any connectors. They're high-current junctions for a multi-million-dollar aircraft. And you're suggesting we let a teenager fabricate them? Rick scoffed. Ms. Henderson held up her hand, silencing further comments. At this point, we need options. All of them. She turned to Andre. You'd work under direct supervision, understand? One mistake and we abort the idea. Yes, ma'am. Andre nodded seriously. Hector, you supervise him. The rest of you, continue with the diagnostics and prepare everything else so we're ready if the fabrication works. I'll inform Mr. Reynolds about the delay, but I'm not telling him we can't fix it. With that, she strode away, already pulling out her phone. Hector led Andre to a workbench in the back of the hangar. This is where we do our precision work, he explained, turning on bright overhead lights. Show me exactly what Patterson taught you about fabricating connectors. For the next hour, Andre demonstrated the techniques he'd learned, working with sample materials. His hands moved with confidence, born from countless hours of practice. Hector watched critically, occasionally asking questions or suggesting adjustments. Finally, Hector nodded. All right, let's see what you can do with the real thing. The damaged connectors were brought to the workbench. 3 specialized components that looked simple but served a critical function in the aircraft's electrical system. Andre studied the specifications on the computer, then began the painstaking work of fabricating replacements. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. The hangar grew quieter as regular staff left for the day, but the emergency team working on the Gulfstream remained. Andre's world narrowed to the workbench, the precision tools in his hands and the delicate components taking shape under his careful attention. How's it coming? Ms. Henderson appeared beside them, her normally immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. Her jacket was gone and her hair slightly disheveled. He's good, Hector said simply, pointing to the first completed connector. Really good. Ms. Henderson examined the component critically. Will it hold up to inspection standards? I believe so, Hector replied. We'll test it thoroughly before installation. She nodded. Reynolds is not happy about the delay, but he's agreed to postpone his departure until noon tomorrow. Provided we can guarantee the aircraft is safe. We'll make it happen, Hector assured her. As Ms. Henderson walked away, Andre looked up from his work. Thank you for trusting me, Mr. Hector. The older man shrugged. Don't thank me yet. We've still got a mountain of work ahead, and the real test will be when we power up that panel. By midnight, Andre had finished fabricating all 3 connectors. Each one passed Hector's rigorous inspection, and the team began the installation process. Andre watched, learning from every move the experienced mechanics made. Despite his exhaustion, his mind felt sharp, absorbing new knowledge with every passing minute. "We're ready for power-up," Rick announced at 2:30 a.m. The team gathered around the aircraft, tension thick in the air. Hector looked at Andre. "You found the problem. You want to do the honors of turning it on?" Andre's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "You've earned it, kid." With trembling hands, Andre followed Hector's instructions to initiate the power sequence. Lights flickered on throughout the aircraft, and the gentle hum of electronics filled the cabin. Everyone watched the electrical panel intently, looking for any sign of trouble. "Running diagnostics now," Rick said, connecting a laptop to the system. Minutes ticked by as the computer performed hundreds of checks. Andre hardly dared to breathe. Finally, Rick looked up with a grin. "All systems nominal. Power distribution is stable. Temperature readings normal." A collective sigh of relief passed through the team. Hector clapped Andre on the shoulder. "Well done, kid. Well done." "We're not finished yet," Ms. Henderson reminded them, though her voice had lost some of its edge. "We still need to run the full testing sequence and document everything for certification. Andre, you're officially off shift. Go home and get some rest." Andre shook his head. "If it's all the same to you, ma'am, I'd like to stay and see it through." A hint of a smile touched her lips. "Your choice. But don't expect extra pay." "I'm not doing it for the money," Andre said simply. The testing continued through the early morning hours. Each system check further confirmed that the repair was holding. By 6 a.m., the aircraft was fully reassembled, the cabin restored to its immaculate condition, and the final documentation being prepared. Andre sat in the break room, nursing a cup of strong coffee. His eyes burned with fatigue, but his heart was full. He had contributed to something important, not just cleaning or fetching tools, but actually fixing a critical problem. The memory of his hands creating those connectors, parts that were now installed in a multi-million-dollar aircraft, filled him with quiet pride. Hector joined him, pouring himself coffee before slumping into a chair. "You did good work tonight, Andre. Real good work. Thanks, Mr. Hector. Not many people have what you've got. That combination of mechanical aptitude and attention to detail. Patterson was right about you." Andre stared into his coffee. "Do you think, is there any chance Henderson might keep me on after this week?" Hector considered the question. "It's not common for them to hire someone without formal training. But after tonight, you've definitely made an impression." The door to the break room swung open and Ms. Henderson entered. Despite having been awake all night, she looked remarkably composed in a fresh blouse. "Gentlemen, Mr. Reynolds will be arriving in 1 hour to inspect the aircraft before departure. Everything needs to be perfect." Her gaze settled on Andre. "Wilson, you look like you've been hit by a truck. Go wash up and change into a fresh uniform. There's one in my office. That might actually fit you." Andre blinked in surprise. "You want me to stay for the client inspection? You were instrumental in identifying and fixing the problem. You should be present when we explain what happened and how we resolved it." As she turned to leave, she added, "And Andre, good job with those connectors." Andre looked at Hector in disbelief after she left. The older mechanic chuckled. "Did Diane Henderson just give you a compliment? Now I've seen everything." An hour later, Andre stood with the maintenance team as a sleek black SUV pulled up to the hangar. His heart pounded in his chest. He was about to meet Thomas Reynolds, one of the most powerful tech executives in the country. The car door opened, and a tall man stepped out. He wore an expensive charcoal suit that looked like it had been tailored while he slept. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his posture radiated authority. This was a man accustomed to commanding rooms and making billion-dollar decisions before breakfast. As Thomas Reynolds approached, Andre stood a little straighter in his borrowed uniform, wondering what the CEO would think if he knew that critical parts of his private jet had been fabricated by a 17-year-old kid from the south side of Atlanta. Thomas Reynolds walked with purpose, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the hangar floor. His face wore the expression of a man whose time was worth thousands of dollars per minute. Following him was a younger man in a similar but slightly less expensive suit, carrying a leather portfolio and checking his watch nervously. Ms. Henderson stepped forward to greet them. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. I appreciate your understanding regarding the delay." Reynolds barely nodded. "I've rescheduled 3 meetings in Tokyo already. You said there was an electrical issue?" "Yes, sir. We discovered a potentially serious problem with the main electrical distribution panel. If it had gone undetected, it could have caused a catastrophic failure mid-flight." Reynolds' stern expression flickered slightly. "How serious are we talking?" "Fire risk, sir. Possibly complete electrical failure over the Pacific." That got his attention. The CEO glanced at the gleaming white Gulf Stream. "And you're certain it's fixed?" 100%, sir. We've run every possible diagnostic. The aircraft is actually safer now than when it came in for routine maintenance." Reynolds nodded, then gestured toward the assembled team. "Who found the problem?" Ms. Henderson hesitated for just a moment before turning to Andre. "This is Andre Wilson. He discovered the issue during a routine cabin inspection." Reynolds's eyebrows rose slightly as he looked Andre over. The borrowed uniform fit better than his previous one, but still marked him as the youngest person in the hangar by far. "You found the electrical problem?" Reynolds asked directly. Andre swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. I noticed the panel was hot when it shouldn't have been, and there was discoloration on some of the wiring." "And you are what? 19? 20? 17, sir?" Reynolds' eyebrows climbed higher. 17? And you work for Henderson Aviation regularly?" Andre glanced at Ms. Henderson, unsure how to answer. She stepped in smoothly. "Andre is assisting us temporarily. He comes highly recommended by David Patterson, one of the most respected mechanics in the region." Reynolds turned his attention to Hector. "And the repair itself? I assume that was handled by your senior staff?" Before Hector could answer, Ms. Henderson surprised everyone. "Actually, Mr. Reynolds, Andre fabricated the replacement connectors when we couldn't source the parts quickly enough. Under supervision, of course, his work passed all our quality control checks." A heavy silence fell over the group. Andre felt his face growing hot as Reynolds studied him with new intensity. "You're telling me that parts of my $45 million jet were fabricated by a 17-year-old? Ms. Henderson stood her ground. "I'm telling you that without Andre's skills, you wouldn't be flying to Tokyo today at all. And yes, every component meets or exceeds manufacturer specifications." Reynolds' assistant shifted uncomfortably, but the CEO himself seemed more intrigued than angry. "Show me," he said simply. Ms. Henderson led Reynolds and his assistant toward the aircraft, with Hector and Andre following. The rest of the team returned to their regular duties, exchanging meaningful glances. Inside the Gulf Stream, Hector opened an access panel to reveal the newly repaired electrical system. "These 3 connectors," Hector pointed out, "were fabricated in our shop last night. They replaced damaged components that were showing signs of arcing and insulation breakdown." Reynolds leaned in to look closer. "And the young man made these?" "Yes, sir. I supervised, but the work is his." "How long have you been working on aircraft, Andre?" Reynolds asked without looking away from the panel. "Officially? 3 days at Henderson, sir. But I've been learning from Mr. Patterson for about a year at the municipal airport." "A year?" Reynolds repeated, straightening up. "And before that?" Andre shrugged slightly. "Just reading whatever I could find. Watching YouTube videos on aircraft maintenance, hanging around the airport." Reynolds turned to study Andre more carefully. "Self-taught then?" "Mostly, sir." Reynolds glanced at his assistant, who seemed to understand some unspoken command, and made a note in his portfolio. "Well, Ms. Henderson, it appears your team has done exceptional work under pressure. I'll trust your assessment that the aircraft is flight ready." "It is, sir. We wouldn't release it otherwise, regardless of the schedule." "Good. We'll depart as soon as my pilot completes the pre-flight checks." As they exited the aircraft, Reynolds paused beside Andre. "Thank you for your attention to detail, young man. You may have saved lives yesterday." Andre nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The gravity of the situation hadn't fully hit him until that moment. If that electrical problem had gone undetected, people could have died over the Pacific Ocean. The group walked toward the hangar entrance where two pilots in crisp uniforms waited. As Reynolds conferred with them, Andre felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Ms. Henderson. "When you finish your shift today, come to my office. We need to discuss your future here." Andre's heart leaped. "Yes, ma'am." She gave him a rare smile before walking away to join Reynolds and the pilots. Andre watched them, still trying to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. "Don't get too excited," Hector said, appearing beside him. "When Diane Henderson wants to discuss your future, it could mean anything from a promotion to being banned from the premises forever." Andre laughed nervously. "Great, that narrows it down. Either way, you've earned some rest. Go take a break before you fall over." Andre nodded gratefully and headed toward the break room. He was exhausted but too wired to consider sleeping. As he pushed open the door, he heard someone call his name. Turning, he saw Reynolds' assistant hurrying toward him. "Mr. Wilson? A moment, please." Andre waited, wondering what the man could want. "Mr. Reynolds asked me to give you this." The assistant handed Andre a business card with the Reynolds Technologies logo embossed in silver. "He'd like you to email him directly with your contact information and educational background." Andre took the card, stunned. Why would he want that? "Mr. Reynolds has a personal interest in developing technical talent. That's all I'm authorized to say." With a curt nod, the assistant returned to the Gulf Stream, where final preparations for departure were underway. Andre stared at the card, in his hand. Thomas Reynolds, CEO, with a direct email address and phone number. It seemed unreal. By the time Andre finished his break, the Gulfstream was taxiing toward the runway. He watched through the hangar doors as the sleek jet accelerated down the tarmac and lifted gracefully into the sky, banking gently as it turned toward the Pacific Ocean and Tokyo beyond. "There goes your handiwork," Rick said, stopping beside him. "Flying at 45,000 feet with bigwigs who have no idea their lives might depend on parts made by a kid." Andre winced. "When you put it that way, it sounds terrifying." Rick laughed and clapped him on the shoulder. "Welcome to aviation, kid. Everything we do matters. That's what makes it the best job in the world." The rest of Andre's shift passed in a blur of routine tasks. The adrenaline of the night before had worn off, leaving him bone-tired but satisfied. As 5 o'clock approached, he cleaned and organized his work area, then headed toward Ms. Henderson's office with equal parts hope and anxiety. Her office was smaller than he expected, but impeccably organized. Awards and certifications covered one wall, while aircraft schematics decorated another. Ms. Henderson looked up from her computer as he knocked on the open door. "Come in, Andre. Close the door behind you." He did as instructed, then stood awkwardly, until she gestured to a chair. "You've had quite an introduction to Henderson Aviation," she began, leaning back slightly. "Not many people identify a potentially catastrophic issue on their third day." "I got lucky," Andre said modestly. "I was just in the right place at the right time. Luck had nothing to do with it. You noticed what several experienced mechanics missed. That's not luck, that's talent." Andre shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the praise but secretly pleased. "I've spoken with David Patterson," she continued. "He tells me you're finishing high school this year. Do you have plans for college?" The question caught Andre off guard. "I've applied to a couple of technical schools, but without scholarships." He trailed off, not wanting to mention his family's financial situation. Ms. Henderson nodded as if his unfinished sentence confirmed something she already knew. "Henderson Aviation has an apprenticeship program. It's competitive. We usually take 2 students per year. The program includes part-time work while you attend technical college, with tuition assistance." Andre sat up straighter, hardly daring to hope. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying we'd like to consider you for next year's cohort. You'd need to finish high school first, of course, and there's an application process. But after what I've seen, you'd be a strong candidate." Andre's mind raced. This was beyond anything he had imagined when he walked into the hangar 3 days ago. "The deadline for applications is next month," Ms. Henderson continued, handing him a folder. All the information is in here. Think about it, discuss it with your family, and let me know if you're interested. I'm interested, Andre said immediately, then added, but I'll review everything carefully. Thank you, Ms. Henderson. This means a lot. She nodded, the hint of a smile playing at her lips. One more thing. Mr. Reynolds was quite impressed with you. He's asked to be kept informed of your progress, which is unusual, to say the least. Andre thought of the business card in his pocket. His assistant gave me his card. I'm aware. Thomas Reynolds doesn't hand those out lightly. Whatever opportunity he may offer you, I hope you'll still consider our apprenticeship program. We need skilled people like you, Andre. I will, I promise. As Andre left the office, clutching the apprenticeship folder, he felt as if he were walking on air despite his exhaustion. 3 days ago, he had been a high school kid who hung around the airport. Now he had options, real options for a future in aviation. Outside the hangar, the late afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. Aircraft continued to take off and land, their engines roaring with power and possibility. One of them carried his handiwork across the ocean, and somewhere in that vast sky, Andre could see his future taking shape, rising like a plane catching the wind beneath its wings. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind for Andre. Henderson Aviation had kept him on, moving him from temporary emergency help to a part-time position while he finished his senior year. His days fell into an exhausting but exhilarating rhythm. School in the morning, work at the hangar in the afternoon, homework late into the night, then up early to do it all again. His grandmother had cried when he told her about the apprenticeship opportunity. Your grandfather would be so proud, she'd said, wiping her eyes. That man loved anything with wings, just like you. Andre hadn't known his grandfather well. He'd passed when Andre was only 5, but he remembered a tall man with kind eyes who had taken him to the airport fence to watch planes take off. Those early memories had planted the seed of his fascination with flight. It was a Wednesday afternoon when everything changed again. Andre was performing a routine inspection on a small Cessna when Hector approached, looking unusually serious. Andre, Ms. Henderson wants to see you in the main office right now. Andre's stomach dropped. Did I do something wrong? Hector shrugged. She didn't say. Just told me to find you immediately. Wiping his hands on a shop rag, Andre made his way across the hangar floor, racking his brain for any mistake he might have made recently. Had one of his maintenance checks missed something? Was there a complaint from a client? When he reached the main office, the receptionist waved him straight, through to the conference room without a word. Andre knocked tentatively on the door. Come in, Ms. Henderson called. Andre opened the door and froze. Sitting at the conference table was Thomas Reynolds. The CEO looked exactly as he had 2 weeks earlier, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. But this time he was alone without his assistant or pilots. A sleek laptop sat open in front of him. Andre, good. Come in and close the door, Ms. Henderson said, her tone giving away nothing. Andre complied, his mind racing. Why would the CEO of Reynolds Technologies be back so soon after his Tokyo trip? And why would he want to see a maintenance trainee? Mr. Wilson, Reynolds said, gesturing to an empty chair. Please, join us. Andre sat down carefully, conscious of his work uniform with its smudges of aircraft grease. Good afternoon, Mr. Reynolds. I didn't know you were back from Tokyo. Got back yesterday. Successful trip, thanks in no small part to your work on the Gulf Stream. Reynolds studied Andre with interest. Ms. Henderson tells me you've been doing excellent work these past 2 weeks. I'm trying my best, sir. Reynolds nodded. I've been looking into your background a bit, if you don't mind. Your teachers at Westside High speak highly of your abilities in math and physics. Your principal mentioned you've never missed a day of school despite working part-time jobs since you were 14. Andre shifted uncomfortably. The idea that this powerful businessman had been asking questions about him was both flattering and unnerving. My grandmother raised me to take education seriously. A wise woman, Reynolds said. And what are your plans after graduation? Andre glanced at Ms. Henderson, who nodded encouragingly. Henderson Aviation has offered to consider me for their apprenticeship program. I'd work here while attending technical college. A solid path, Reynolds agreed. And after that? What's your long-term goal? Andre hesitated, then decided to be honest. I want to become an aerospace engineer, sir. I'd like to design aircraft systems, not just maintain them, but that requires a 4-year degree which isn't really in the cards right now. Reynolds leaned back, a slight smile playing on his lips. What if it could be? Before Andre could respond, Reynolds reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a small item. He set it on the table between them. It was a necklace, a simple silver chain with a pendant in the shape of pilots' wings. The wings were old-fashioned, the kind worn by military pilots decades ago. Do you recognize this? Reynolds asked. Andre leaned forward, confused. It looks like vintage pilot wings, sir. Air Force, maybe? This particular set belonged to a Tuskegee airman, Reynolds said quietly. One of the first black military aviators in the United States Armed Forces. Andre nodded. I did a report on them in history class last year. They faced incredible discrimination but still became some of the best pilots in World War II. Indeed. Reynolds tapped the wings gently. When I was boarding my jet 2 weeks ago, I noticed you were wearing something similar around your neck. It caught my eye just as you were leaning over the control panel. Andre's hand automatically went to his chest, feeling for the familiar shape beneath his uniform. My necklace? It was my grandfather's. I always wear it. May I see it? Reynolds asked. Puzzled, Andre reached under his collar and pulled out his necklace. The silver wings caught the light as he lifted the chain over his head and handed it to Reynolds. The CEO held it reverently, turning it over in his hands. His expression changed subtly as he examined the back of the pendant. JW 1944, Reynolds read the tiny engraving aloud. He looked up, his eyes intense. Your grandfather was James Wilson? Andre's confusion deepened. Yes, sir. Did you know him? Reynolds set down Andre's necklace carefully next to the one he had brought. They were nearly identical. I never had the honor of meeting him personally, but my father knew him very well. Reynolds paused, collecting his thoughts. My father was a young flight instructor at Moton Field in 1944. He was white, one of the few white officers willing to train the Tuskegee Airmen. Your grandfather was one of his students. Andre stared at the twin sets of wings on the table, his mind struggling to process this connection across generations. My father always said James Wilson was the most naturally gifted pilot he ever trained. Reynolds continued. After the war, they corresponded for several years. My father kept every letter. Ms. Henderson sat perfectly still, clearly as surprised by this revelation as Andre was. I don't understand, Andre said finally. How did you make this connection? From just seeing my necklace? Reynolds smiled. When I was a boy, my father showed me a photograph of himself with his Tuskegee students. He pointed out James Wilson specifically, said he was wearing his wings even in the photo because he was so proud of earning them. My father had a similar set that James had given him as a thank you gift. He gestured to the wings he'd brought. These wings! Andre reached for his necklace, holding it tightly. His grandfather had rarely spoken about his wartime experiences, at least not to a young boy. By the time Andre was old enough to ask meaningful questions, his grandfather was gone. I don't know what to say, sir. When I saw those wings around your neck, something clicked. I couldn't place it at first, but on the flight to Tokyo, I remembered that photograph. After we landed, I called my father's old house. My sister lives there now, and asked her to find those letters in the wings. Reynolds opened his laptop and turned it toward Andre. On the screen was a black and white photograph showing a group of young black men in uniform standing proudly in front of a training aircraft. Among them was a single white officer. One of the airmen in the front row was wearing pilot's wings on his training uniform. That's him, Andre whispered, recognizing his grandfather's face even across the decades. That's my grandfather. Reynolds nodded. And that's my father beside him. He pointed to the white officer. William Reynolds. He passed away 5 years ago at the age of 97. Andre studied the photograph, seeing the resemblance between the young officer and the CEO sitting across from him. This is incredible, Mr. Reynolds. The world is smaller than we think, Andre. Reynolds closed the laptop gently. My father told me many times that he learned more from those men than he ever taught them. He said they showed him what courage really meant, flying for a country that didn't fully recognize their humanity, excelling despite every obstacle placed in their path. Ms. Henderson, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally spoke. This is quite the coincidence, Mr. Reynolds. I don't believe in coincidences, Ms. Henderson. I believe in patterns. Reynolds turned back to Andre. Your grandfather had a natural gift for understanding aircraft. According to my father's letters, he could diagnose engine problems just by listening. He could feel when something was wrong with an aircraft before instruments showed any warning. Sound familiar? Andre nodded slowly, thinking of the hot electrical panel he'd discovered by chance, or perhaps not by chance at all. After the war, your grandfather wanted to become a commercial pilot, but those opportunities weren't available to black veterans. Then, Reynolds continued, he became a mechanic instead. My father tried to help him get hired at better facilities, but the doors remained closed. Andre felt a complex mix of emotions: pride in his grandfather's achievements, anger at the injustice he had faced, and wonder at this unexpected connection to his own present. Mr. Reynolds, this is fascinating history, but… Andre hesitated. Why are you telling me this now? Reynolds leaned forward, his expression serious. Because talents like yours and your grandfather's are rare. Because doors that were closed to him are open to you. And because I believe I have a chance to right an old wrong. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. Reynolds Technologies has an educational foundation. We sponsor 20 engineering scholarships each year at top universities around the country. The foundation was established by my father specifically to support talented students who might otherwise miss their opportunity. Andre stared at the folder, afraid to reach for it, afraid to hope. This is a formal offer of a full scholarship to Georgia Tech's aerospace engineering program, beginning after your high school graduation, Reynolds said. It covers tuition, room and board, books, and a monthly stipend. The only requirements are that you maintain a 3.0 GPA and that you work at Reynolds Aerospace Division during your summer breaks. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Andre gripped the edge of the table to steady himself. Full scholarship to Georgia Tech? Ms. Henderson smiled at his shock. It's one of the best aerospace engineering programs in the country, Andre. Reynolds nodded. The offer stands regardless of whether you choose to accept the Henderson apprenticeship in the meantime, though I imagine the practical experience wouldn't hurt your studies. Andre looked from Reynolds to Ms. Henderson and back again, searching for words. I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Reynolds. You can thank me by making the most of this opportunity, Reynolds said, sliding Andre's necklace back across the table. Your grandfather faced barriers that should never have existed. He deserved better than what the world gave him. But through you, perhaps his gift lives on. Andre picked up the necklace, feeling its familiar weight. The weight of history, of connection, of legacy. As he slipped it back over his head, the silver wings settled against his heart where they had always belonged. I won't let you down, sir, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion tightening his throat. And I won't let him down either. Reynolds smiled, a genuine warmth replacing his usual businesslike demeanor. I know you won't, Andre. Some talents skip a generation, but they always find their way back into the world. 5 years later, the Georgia summer sun beat down on the Reynolds Aerospace Facility, a sprawling complex of hangars and research buildings on the outskirts of Atlanta. The main building gleamed with glass and steel, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the vintage aircraft displayed on pedestals around the campus. In the advanced prototyping lab, Andre Wilson stood before a holographic display, manipulating a 3D model of an electrical distribution system with practiced gestures. At 22, he had grown taller and broader, his teenage lankiness replaced by the confident posture of a young professional. He wore a blue button-down shirt with the Reynolds Aerospace logo, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and a badge identifying him as part of the Advanced Systems Engineering team. The silver wings around his neck caught the light as he leaned forward to examine a junction point in the model. "There," he said, zooming in on the area. "That's where we're getting the power fluctuation. The new composite material is creating unexpected resistance at the connection point." His colleague, Dr. Patel, a veteran engineer with 20 years of experience, leaned in to study the area Andre had highlighted. "Good catch. How did you spot that? The simulation wasn't flagging any issues there." Andre smiled slightly. "Just a feeling." The temperature gradient looked off by a fraction. Dr. Patel shook her head in amazement. "Your feelings have saved us weeks of troubleshooting more times than I can count." She made a note on her tablet. "I'll have the materials team reformulate the composite for the next prototype. Let's try adjusting the connector design first," Andre suggested, already manipulating the model to show an alternative configuration. "If we increase the surface area of the contact point here and here, we might solve the issue without changing the material properties." Dr. Patel watched as he quickly redesigned the connector, the holographic model updating in real time. "That could work. Let's run a new simulation." As they waited for the computer to process the changes, Dr. Patel glanced at Andre. "Reynolds is bringing some VIPs through the lab today. Board members, I think. You might want to tidy up your station." Andre looked at his workspace, organized chaos of technical manuals, prototype components, and handwritten notes. "Right. Thanks for the heads up." Just as he finished straightening up, the lab door opened. Thomas Reynolds entered, followed by 5 people in business attire. Despite being 5 years older than when Andre had first met him, Reynolds looked largely unchanged, still fit, still impeccably dressed, his silver hair perhaps a touch whiter. "And this is our advanced systems lab," Reynolds was saying as he led the group inside. "This is where we develop the next generation of aerospace electrical systems." The visitors looked around with polite interest, their eyes glazing slightly at the technical displays. Reynolds spotted Andre and Dr. Patel and changed course to approach them. "Perfect timing," he said warmly. "I'd like to introduce 2 of our best engineers. Dr. Reena Patel heads our systems integration team, and this is Andre Wilson, who joined us through our scholarship program and has quickly become one of our most innovative designers." Andre shook hands with the visitors, recognizing the chairman of the Reynolds Technologies Board among them. "Mr. Wilson is actually the inspiration behind our expanded scholarship initiative," Reynolds continued, surprising Andre. "After seeing his success, we've increased funding to sponsor 50 students annually instead of 20. The chairman nodded approvingly. "The program has become a valuable pipeline for recruiting top talent. Excellent return on investment." Reynolds smiled. "It's more than an investment strategy, Harold. It's about recognizing potential in places others might overlook." He turned to Andre. "Would you mind showing our guests what you're working on?" "Of course," Andre replied, turning to the holographic display. As he explained the electrical distribution system for their next-generation aircraft, he felt a familiar sense of wonder. 5 years ago, he had been cleaning private jets and dreaming of someday understanding how they worked. Now he was designing systems that would power aircraft that didn't even exist yet. After the tour group moved on, Andre returned to his simulation, which had completed its processing. The results confirmed his theory. His design modification had resolved the power fluctuation issue completely. "Nailed it again," Dr. Patel said, reviewing the data. "I'm going to forward this to production. We should have a physical prototype by next week." Andre nodded, already thinking about the next challenge. "I want to run a stress test under extreme temperature conditions. The system needs to be reliable from the Sahara to Siberia." "Always thorough," Dr. Patel observed. "That's why Reynolds put you on the special project, isn't it?" The special project was a classified aircraft design that only a handful of engineers were cleared to work on. Andre had been surprised when he was assigned to the team just 3 months after completing his degree. "Maybe," Andre said with a small smile. "Speaking of which, I have a meeting about it in 10 minutes. Will you be okay finishing up here? Go, Doctor. Patel waved him off. I've been designing electrical systems since before you were born. I think I can manage. Andre gathered his tablet and notes, then headed for the secure development wing of the facility. He passed through 2 security checkpoints, his badge and fingerprints scanned at each one, before reaching the unmarked door of the project room. Inside, a small team of engineers was already assembled around a conference table. At the head stood William Chen, the project director, a brilliant aerospace engineer who had been personally recruited by Thomas Reynolds from NASA. Wilson, good. We're just about to start, Chen said, gesturing to an empty chair. Andre took his seat, noticing Reynolds himself sitting quietly in the corner of the room. This was unusual. The CEO rarely attended technical meetings. As you all know, Chen began. Project Condor aims to create an aircraft capable of operating for extended periods in the stratosphere using minimal fuel. Today, we're facing a critical decision point regarding the power management system. Chen activated a display showing 2 competing designs. Team A has proposed a conventional system with proven reliability but significant weight. Team B, he nodded toward Andre, has developed an alternative approach that's lighter and more efficient but uses unproven technology. Andre sat up straighter. He had been working on this alternative design for months, often staying late into the night to refine it. The system used principles similar to those he had first encountered when fixing the electrical panel on Reynolds's private jet, but taken to an entirely new level. Both approaches have merit, Chen continued, but we need to commit to one direction today to stay on schedule. The room fell silent as everyone studied the competing designs. Finally, Reynolds spoke from his corner. What's your recommendation, William? Chen hesitated. Team A's design meets all requirements with minimal risk. Team B's design exceeds performance targets but introduces uncertainties. He looked at Andre. Would you care to make your case, Wilson? Andre stood and approached the display. For the next 10 minutes, he walked through his design in detail, explaining how each innovation addressed specific challenges and how the integrated system would function under various conditions. He spoke with quiet confidence, the technical concepts flowing naturally as he responded to questions from the other engineers. The truth is, Andre concluded, aerospace hasn't seen a significant revolution in electrical distribution systems in decades. We've been refining the same basic approach since the 1980s. This project gives us an opportunity to leap forward, not just inch ahead. When he finished, Reynolds asked a simple question. If this were your decision alone, Andre, which design would you choose? Without hesitation, Andre pointed to his own. This one, sir, it's not just better for this aircraft. It will change how we approach system design for every aircraft that follows. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully, then looked at Chen. It's your call, William. You're the project director. Chen surveyed the room, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled slightly. Let's go with Wilson's design. I prefer calculated risks to guaranteed mediocrity. A ripple of excitement passed through the team. Andre felt a weight lift from his shoulders, months of work validated in a single moment. As the meeting broke up, Reynolds approached Andre. Walk with me, he said quietly. They left the secure area and headed toward the facility's central atrium, a soaring space with a massive skylight and a restored P-51 Mustang, the aircraft flown by the Tuskegee Airmen, suspended from the ceiling. That was impressive work in there, Reynolds said. William doesn't impress easily. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to work on Condor. Reynolds nodded, his gaze moving to the vintage fighter plane above them. You know, when I offered you that scholarship 5 years ago, I had high hopes, but you've exceeded all of them. Andre followed his gaze to the P-51. I had good motivation. Reynolds smiled, understanding the reference to Andre's grandfather. James would be proud. He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. The board is pressing me to think about succession planning. The abrupt change of subject caught Andre off guard. Sir, I'm not getting any younger, Andre. Eventually, Reynolds Technologies will need new leadership. People who understand both the business and the technology, who can see where aerospace is heading. Andre wasn't sure how to respond. Was Reynolds suggesting what it sounded like? We're establishing a new division focused entirely on next-generation aircraft systems, Reynolds continued. It will operate with significant autonomy, developing technologies that might not show profit for 5 or 10 years, the kind of long-term thinking that built this company in the first place. That sounds exciting, Andre said cautiously. I want you to run it. Andre stopped walking. Sir, I'm 22. I've been out of college for less than a year. And in that time you filed 4 patents and developed a system that could revolutionize aircraft electrical design, Reynolds countered. Age is irrelevant, vision and talent are what matter. I don't have any management experience, Andre protested. You'll have a seasoned administrative team supporting you. Your job will be to set the technical direction and inspire the engineering staff. Reynolds smiled slightly. Besides, I was 30 when my father put me in charge of a division. You're getting a head start. Andre touched the wings around his neck, a habit he had developed when facing important decisions. This is unexpected. Take some time to think about it, Reynolds said. But not too much time. Innovation waits for no one. They had reached the main entrance of the facility. Through the glass doors, Andre could see the employee parking lot where his car, a modest sedan, nothing flashy despite his generous salary, was parked. One more thing, Reynolds said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Andre. Your grandfather's wings, the ones I showed you 5 years ago. I want you to have them. Andre took the envelope with surprise. Sir, these belong to your family. They were a gift to your father, and now they're a gift to you. A reminder of where all this began. With 2 men who saw beyond the limitations of their time, Reynolds extended his hand. Think about my offer, Andre. The division is yours if you want it. As they shook hands, Andre felt the weight of the envelope in his other hand, a physical connection to the past, even as he contemplated an unexpected future. Later that evening, Andre sat on the balcony of his apartment, watching the sunset paint the Atlanta skyline in shades of gold and crimson. On the small table beside him lay 2 sets of silver wings, identical except for the engravings on their backs. He picked up his grandfather's original wings, the ones he had worn since childhood, and turned them over. JW 1944. Then he picked up the second set, the ones that had belonged to William Reynolds Sr. They bore a different inscription, for courage that transcends barriers, WR to JW. Andre thought about the path that had brought him here. From a boy watching planes from outside the fence to a teenager cleaning private jets, to a young engineer designing aircraft systems that had never existed before, and now potentially a division head at one of the world's leading aerospace companies. His phone buzzed with a text from his grandmother. How was your day, baby? Did you eat dinner? He smiled and typed back, Great day. Big news to tell you. This weekend. And yes, I ate. She replied with a heart emoji, then, Your grandfather is watching over you. He always said you'd fly higher than he ever could. Andre looked up at the darkening sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. The same stars his grandfather had navigated by during the war, flying missions over Europe in a time when America wasn't ready to recognize his humanity, let alone his brilliance. The wings felt warm in his palm, as if they held not just history, but possibility. Andre knew what his answer to Reynolds would be. He would accept the challenge not just for himself, but for the legacy represented by those silver wings, a legacy of breaking barriers, of seeing beyond limitations, of soaring when others said flight was impossible. As night settled over Atlanta, Andre Wilson closed his hand around both sets of wings, feeling their edges press into his palm, a reminder of the past that had shaped him and the future he would help create, one innovation at a time. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check. Responses die.